What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And we have a lot to talk about, as first and foremost, my guest is returned as from 2 weeks ago. Emily Ehman is my guest, and we'll be talking some Big Ten volleyball, and we'll be recapping everything that has happened this past week. We also will be talking about Arizona State knocking off number 8 Washington. On the road, mind you. Those young little Sun Devils grew up and took down some big dogs. No pun intended, of course. Also, on the men's side, we had Ohio State, knocking off Penn State in one of 2 matches, as the 2 teams will also be meeting up with one another this weekend as well. But will the Penn State Nittany Lions be able to bounce back, or will the Ohio State triumph once again? We'll also be talking some other NCAA and volleyball sports, as I'll be talking about that in the second half of the show. All that and more here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you for joining me on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday morning, wherever you're listening from. We had ourselves a big week in NCAA women's volleyball and a little bit of men's volleyball. But to help me out talk about the NCAA men's or women's volleyball matches is my special guest from 2 weeks ago. My guest is the current host of Big Ten Volley Talk, and she's also a author for volleyballmag.com. And she's also a former Northwestern women's volleyball player, as she's probably happy about her Wildcats getting the victory over Rutgers last weekend. So without any further delay, introducing the one, the only, Miss Emily Ehman. Emily, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm glad to be back. I'm so thankful that, women's volleyball has started up again. We got some good matches in, had some postponements along the way, but definitely really good to be back and to get started.
And it's great to have you back, as always, and it's always going to be a great show when you come on, even though you've only been on for 2 episodes, but we're absolutely ecstatic to have you back. And we're going to be talking a lot of Big Ten volleyball. So, without any further delay, let's get on into it.
Let's do it. Let's get into it.
First, we got to get some housekeeping out of the way. So, first and foremost, these are the thoughts and opinions of myself, Teran Rodriguez, and Emily Ehman, and not the thoughts of any third or fourth or multiple organizations that are going on. We just got to get that out of the way. These are our thoughts and opinions, not the thoughts and opinions of iSports Radio, Big Ten Volley Talk, volleyballmag.com, Northwestern. You get the point. So, Emily, what were some Big Ten matchups that stood out to you last weekend?
I will say right off the bat, the one thing that I noticed from the matches from the first night to the second night is every team was so consistent. So every single matchup that happened, the score, about set totals was the same from night to night. So if a team swept a team one night, they swept them again the second night. If a team like Illinois and Iowa went 3-1, it was the same thing night to night. And I think that was something that kind of stuck out to me as being a little, I thought it'd go a little differently. You're playing a really hard night the night before. It might be hard to get your team to kind of bounce back and get going again. But that wasn't the case at all. It seemed like all these teams were very consistent in their play across the board. But I guess, starting out, the first one that comes to mind, the most, I would say, anticipated matchup of the spring this far was, that number 1 Wisconsin team playing number 13 Purdue. I don't know if anyone expected it, to go how it did. Wisconsin swept them both nights. Purdue is a really, really strong team. They were out a few players, but I mean, Wisconsin just looked absolutely unstoppable. I tweeted about it. I was like, this team, if they're not in the NCAA championship on April 25th, I don't know who would be. This team is really, really incredible, just all across the board, from, their libero to setter Sydney Hilly to Dana Retke to Grace Loberg, to all these components. They just are super, super solid.
Oh, I agree. And there were a couple of times where Wisconsin was challenged over the weekend. Obviously, the second match was evident, where it was a set 2, and Purdue was looking like they were going to actually steal a set, but then Wisconsin just came back to life. How do you think Wisconsin battled through that little hiccup in set 2?
I think it's just a testament to how much of a veteran team they are. They have, I think, 8 seniors this year. This team has been tested over those 8 seniors 4 years that they've been there. And I think it just shows that this team is not going to quit. They might be down late in a set, but they're always going to battle. They're always going to come back, especially because they have such veteran players on that team. You look at Purdue, and yeah, they have some older people on their team, but I would say ultimately it's sort of a young team. But this Wisconsin team is super seasoned. They have 4 returning All-Americans. They just know how to play, and they don't really care if they're down in a set. They're just able to battle back. They're able to really control the point. So, you look at a team like Wisconsin, they're not making a lot of errors like a lot of these other teams would, especially late in sets. They just play super clean volleyball across the board. And I think that's one of the reasons why they're able to come back late in those sets, is because they're a veteran team and they don't make mistakes like these other teams might.
I totally agree. And I think for Purdue, I don't think that matchup against Wisconsin really defines them as a team. Sure, they only have 2 seniors this year, but I think that Purdue is a much better team than everyone anticipates them, especially since it's only the first week. So I could see Purdue improving and being better down the road. So what says you, though, Emily?
Yeah, no, I agree. Talking to Dave Shondell throughout the offseason, even now, he's super excited about this crew. They're super well conditioned. Yeah, they might only have 2 seniors, but they're still a really well-rounded team. They have all the good pieces coming in. They have some really good freshmen coming in, a great recruiting class. I remember he talked a lot about the depth that they have. So like I said, they might be out 1 or 2 players, but they have players that are ready to step in. You're opening your matchup against the number 1 team in the country that, in my eyes, is definitely a national championship contender. So there's no reason why this team can't bounce back. I don't see them having an off year at all. I think, opening up, like I said, against the number 1 team in the country is just tough for anyone. I believe they have Iowa next weekend, which, I think you'll really see how dominant they can be against, a team that might not be in the upper echelon of the Big Ten. So I think, this weekend we'll see some really good things out of them, maybe get into a groove a little bit more. But, I expect them to be pretty dominant heading into this weekend too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I definitely agree, and I think Purdue will definitely be better this week, because looking at their schedule, Purdue plays Iowa. I think they should have a better chance of winning that series, considering I know Iowa has a couple studs on their team, but Purdue is definitely going to be hungry to try to get back into the win column, because they know they're a much better team than what last weekend dictated. But my concern for Purdue is, would they still be able to make the NCAA tournament? Because the tournament field has been reduced from 64 all the way down to 48, and the at-large spots have been reduced from 32 all the way down to 18. And it actually was originally 16 but because the Ivy League and the Big West Conference opted out, unfortunately, the at-large spots have been added by 2. But do you think Purdue could get into the NCAA tournament if they play their cards right?
It's this year with, how good the Big Ten always is in the limited tournament. It really is tough for teams like Purdue, for teams like Michigan. They have to have a really outstanding year. Not that is off the table. They always pretty much have outstanding years. Purdue's ranked 13 right now. Maybe that'll change in the next hour or so. But yeah, normally in the Big Ten, you have the NCAA tournament taking about somewhere around 7 teams. 1 year might be 6, 1 year might be 8. It sort of depends. But yeah, I mean, from at least how Purdue finished last year, they finished 5th and still an incredibly dominant team. They made the tournament, but when you only have 18 bids to give, you'll have the number 1 team in the Big Ten who, I'm going to say is going to be Wisconsin. And then you have those next 3 that are always very, very well-seasoned teams, just incredible opponents, Nebraska, Minnesota, Penn State. And those 4 are, I would say, kind of untouchable. Those teams are pretty much always going to make the tournament unless they just absolutely don't have the matches played or, they have a bunch of losses. But those teams are pretty much set to be in the tournament. But it seems really hard for the Big Ten to get more than 3 at-large bids. You're talking about 18. I would assume that, Purdue has a good season, finish probably, I would say, in the top 25, 30 teams. It would be really hard not to give them a bid. However, you're only dealing with 18, so giving 4 extra bids to one conference just seems, you could say it seems a little unfair, but then, Purdue's RPI is going to be way higher than these other teams. They'll probably have some really big wins under their belt. In my opinion, they definitely should make the tournament. I would say through a team like Michigan, I don't know, the story changes. They've already had postponements. They were, could have been questionable last season. This year, I don't know. To me, it seems like they'll only give about 5 bids to the Big Ten without, causing a huge uproar of the other small conferences that might think that they deserve those over the Big Ten, which in my opinion, they don't. But, you could make that argument.
And talking about some of these other teams that could possibly miss, other talented teams that could possibly miss the NCAA tournament, you have to look at the non-Power 5 schools as well. Like, you have to look at San Diego or BYU or Coastal Carolina, which unfortunately they fell short in their tournament. And then you look at, then you have to look at the Pac-12 with how many teams could be vying for a possible NCAA tournament bid, because they can only take 1 team and maybe 2, and then the ACC is always up there, and then you look at the Big 12 with Baylor's probably going to get in, and then Kansas State, who's having a phenomenal year, is still questionable and whatnot. So it's going to be tricky.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You bring up Coastal Carolina. It's a team, they didn't technically win their conference tournament. They got beat out by Texas State, but they were a team that went 18-1 in the fall. They looked super solid the entire year, but, Texas State ultimately earned that bid. They're going, Coastal Carolina is a team that theoretically really deserves to be there, but I think it's hard to make the case when you have teams like, Purdue, Michigan that would do a lot better in the tournament, but then it's a conversation of you got the big dogs and you got the little dogs, and who do you really want in that tournament? Who really deserves to be there? In my opinion, Coastal Carolina deserves to be there, but a team like Michigan, a team like Purdue deserves to be there way more.
Mm-hmm. And losing Namath really hurt Coastal Carolina, because Coastal Carolina was just ripping Texas State until that injury, and that was pretty much where all the momentum went out the window for them, and it really sucks because I think they nothing against Texas State, but I maybe could have seen Coastal Carolina winning that match just because Nemeth is just such a powerhouse. But Sunbelt Player of the Year, she looked great that entire season. It's hard now knowing that these teams aren't going to have very many matchups in the spring. Do you invite them to the tournament? I don't know. And I don't even know what's going to be happening with the NIVC. So, I don't know if it's going to be a full field or if it's going to be a partial field. And that's going to also be crowded as well. But everyone would most likely want to be in the NCAA tournament. Yeah, it's.
You look at Big Ten teams. Especially that kind of middle section of Big Ten teams. They're always fighting for that last or second to last spot that the Big Ten normally gets for the NCAA tournament. You're looking at the Ohio State, Michigan State, Northwestern, Maryland, that group of Big Ten schools, this year would have been their year to kind of, fight for that spot. I can talk about Northwestern specifically, but, their goal has always been to make the NCAA tournament, and they got a really solid group of girls this year looking really hot right out of the gates. But, it's tough no matter how well they do this year. It seems really, really tough for them to make this tournament. When you have teams like Purdue, teams like Michigan that are also trying, that are really reputable programs and always really good, for a team like Northwestern or Michigan State or Maryland, it would be really hard for them this year. The limited tournament just is really kind of reshaping, I think, a lot of teams' goals this year, at least from what I've been hearing from the coaches. And then you don't know how many games you're even going to play. Games are already getting postponed. You might only get 10 games out of the 22. And so, how do you structure your long-term goals for games that aren't even guaranteed?
And it's going to really suck, and especially for the smaller schools, because now their margin of error is very limited. So, and then I also forgot to mention the SEC as well, and how they're a Power 5 conference, and they have some talented teams that are on the rise as well, like Arkansas. Missouri's still up there. Florida took a bit of a tumble after they were looking good. Kentucky's probably going to win the conference unless something drastic happens. A&M, Texas A&M, to me, they kind of disappointed me after they went 4-0. They went 0-4, losing to Mississippi State and Arkansas. I've already spoken my thoughts and opinions on A&M.
I agree. I mean, the SEC looked really good last fall. I'm excited to see their matchups this spring too. And then I would say one conference that really surprised me last fall was the ACC. There were so many good teams there that were playing. They're playing pod play, and their pods were drastically uneven. And the really good teams that were all playing together looked really solid. It was high level of volleyball that, you want to see all the time. You got Notre Dame playing Louisville and all those teams with, Pitt thrown in there. They really surprised me, and I thought they did a really good job last fall. And, I think you'll see a couple of those teams again come April.
Oh, yeah. I definitely liked the ACC region play as well. And to me, I think Georgia Tech kind of, I don't mean to say this in a negative way, but I kind of think Georgia Tech kind of got off a little easy, but...
Very easy.
Yeah, their only true matchup was Miami, and I had a feeling Miami was actually going to challenge them. But other than that, they pretty much ran the table, which is pretty darn impressive. I think after that one loss to Miami, Georgia Tech lost only 3 sets, 2 of which were to Miami the second time, and I think one was to like Clemson or Wake Forest, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you look at a team like Georgia Tech. Yeah, they went 7-1 last fall, but yeah, they're not playing really high level of competition, and especially this year, if you're not playing that high level of competition, it's really hard to make the argument that you should make the tournament. You could go near undefeated, like a team like Coastal Carolina, like we're talking about. They're not playing teams that are going to be in contention to go to the tournament, to go far in the tournament, to even like win a game in the tournament. And then you look at, teams like Georgia Tech, who, yes, they look like a good team, have a good record, but do they deserve to be there? I don't know. I think it was hard to tell from last fall. They're not playing competition that you would think is going to do really well come April. So I don't know. In my opinion, I would, just by seeing how they did last fall, I think they get left out. I think you would take a team like, potentially take Pitt over them, just with the high level of competition that they have. They've been playing well, tight sets with teams, beating good teams. But I think your record is really, it doesn't tell the whole story this year, I'll say. Especially, like I'm saying, Coastal Carolina, Georgia Tech, your record really shouldn't determine necessarily whether or not you're in contention to make the tournament. I think it's a hard argument to make that Georgia Tech was playing really good competition this fall, because they weren't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel that when they start to play those teams like Pitt, Notre Dame, who I've really been impressed with this past fall, Louisville, and heck, maybe even Duke and North Carolina can give them a challenge, that I think they could be a little bit rusty, but again, and it's anything is still possible because they've pretty much gotten their they've pretty much got the light part of their schedule out of the way. No offense to the teams that they face, but now they're going to start facing the big dogs, and heck, even Duke and North Carolina, maybe even Virginia Tech, for goodness sake, could give them a battle. So we'll see. We'll see for the ACC.
Yeah, I really like that group in the fall, and I'm excited to follow them in this spring too. Yeah.
Now we're going to just circle back to the Big 12. Not Big 12, Big 10. But anyway, were there any other Big 10 matchups that stood out to you the last weekend?
Yeah, I gotta say, I could be a little biased, but I watched both Northwestern Rutgers games. I talked to both coaches a lot beforehand. I was actually supposed to call that game on Friday, which things happened, COVID happened, and my game broadcast got canceled. But I spent a while talking to both Shane Davis and Caitlin Schweihofer from Rutgers on their two teams, and this matchup to me was so exciting. In the past, Northwestern hasn't been the most dominant team, especially a team like Rutgers. For me being on the team, it seemed like the Cats kind of played down to their opponent's level. And this weekend, you did not see that at all. Northwestern swept Rutgers both matches, super, super dominant. They have some players coming back that redshirted in the past, and they looked so good. I mean, they're taking big swings. I watched, I had the Wisconsin-Purdue game on at the same time, and I swear to God, the Northwestern team looked just as good as them at times. They're taking big swings, hitting big blocks, making the easy points look really easy. And so I was really excited with how dominant they looked right off the gates, and then holding that for that second night too. And then, the other one that was really exciting was that Ohio State-Maryland game, both of them. I think they were the first game to play opening up on Friday. And I mean, it was just exciting right out of the gates. They went to 5. It was super close, really close calls at the end. They were taking super hard swings throughout. You look at a game like Ohio State-Maryland, they're not ranked, kind of mid to bottom of the Big Ten. So, you're coming in it being like, this might be sort of exciting, but it was a good match. I mean, they're just swinging lights out the entire time, getting really good blocks, making incredible plays all around. And I really liked both of those matchups. Ohio State won in 5 both nights, but dang, Maryland put up a really good fight. And I really like Coach Hughes from Maryland. I mean, he's just a really cool guy. I talked with him before their match as well, and he was just excited to get going and all that. So I really liked that matchup both nights too.
I definitely agree, and I actually made note of this for our other our host for our Ohio sports show, which everyone can catch on Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern time, and that was actually Jen Oldenburg's first win, as she was just recently she was hired last year, and I'm glad for Ohio State's part that they were able to get their first 2 wins for her. So it's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, she's doing great stuff with that program. Like I said, they looked like a well-conditioned, well-seasoned group out there. And, when you have a head coach coming in that's new, it's pretty hard to do well that first year. You're bringing back talent, but you're learning entire new systems. You're, essentially breaking down a lot of the ways that you've been playing the game for so long, and then having a new coach come in, could be teaching you new technique, learning new offensive systems, learning new defensive systems. They looked really good. And, I think she's going to have a really good career there with this Ohio State team.
And I also saw on the Big Ten preseason team that Erica Pritchard was on that team, and none of Ohio State's players made the preseason All-Big Ten team. So I kind of feel that also made Ohio State more motivated to try to get the win, because I think maybe Ohio State said, we have players on our team, and we deserve to we have talented players on our team, and we should have some of those players on the preseason all-first team and whatnot. So
yeah. I mean, with Erica Pritchard, she is just an incredible player. I mean, she is the heart and soul of that Maryland team. Definitely deserve to be on that. But yeah, I think, if you're Ohio State, you look at that and you're like, well, we have good players too. We got to go prove ourselves. And they definitely did that. They played two really hard fought matches and, came out on top. So, props to them for looking good with the new coach and really stepping up that game.
Indeed. So I did hear that Ohio State's next game against Penn State, well, the first game is unfortunately postponed. Do you have any whereabouts on what's going to be happening with the second game, or is Ohio State just going to have the week off?
Yeah, their matchup that was supposed to be tonight on Big Ten Network was postponed. Penn State's having some COVID issues. They're actually a little switcheroo happened. So Penn State and Michigan both are dealing with COVID issues on their team. So the matchup this weekend where Penn State, I believe, was supposed to play. Yeah, like I said, Penn State was supposed to play Ohio State and Michigan was supposed to play Michigan State. So they basically flipped. Michigan State and Ohio State are going to play this weekend, and they're going to play on next week. They're going to start playing on Sunday and then have Sunday, Monday matches. So, I don't want to say lucky for them, but it was good that, they both had an opponent open to play. The schedule was built with no bye week. So, they're talking about postponing these matches, and I don't really know how they can postpone every match that's going to be, delayed. It seems to me like they're going to have to cancel a lot of them, especially if opponents aren't available. But it worked out well this weekend. They had enough time in advance to figure their schedule out when they're playing and have time to, prep for this game. A lot of it's scouting too. You only have a week to prep for these teams. So it's really, really great that Ohio State and Michigan State are able to play. But yeah, Penn State, looking at the horizon, we don't really know what's going to happen. We know they're taking this week off. Michigan's taking the next 2 weeks off and isn't starting play again until February 7th. So, we're already seeing postponements happening. It's something that we expected, but you don't really expect it to come right away. But, hopefully Michigan can get some games in. They really need to play these good opponents. Like I said, Michigan and Penn State, that would have been a huge opportunity for Michigan to really prove themselves because they need to. They really need to make the tournament this year. So that was a big knock to their schedule without playing Penn State. And then, now they won't face Michigan State or Northwestern, which for them, they might think is easy wins, which they would need to make the tournament again. So, these postponements are putting a lot of things into question. Michigan's really going to have to kind of rally back and, figure out a way to get big wins. So they're, in contention for that tournament, like I keep talking about.
I totally agree. And while that series was postponed between Michigan and Penn State, one matchup that actually got canceled altogether was Stanford at USC, which I think I was definitely looking forward to that matchup, considering I wanted to see how Stanford was, and I wanted to see how good USC was, despite them being slated to finish fifth. So I hope Penn State Michigan does get made up, but I also would have liked to have seen USC play a non-conference opponent, just to not have a whole lot of rust. I don't care who they would have played, yeah.
And, you look forward to that Stanford-USC matchup every year. That's a really exciting match. It's always, really high energy, no matter how good Stanford might be. This year, I think everyone just wants to see Stanford. They lost a lot of really, really good players in this offseason, but, they're coming back. They have some really good players that are going to step into those roles. But, yeah, I'm just looking forward to see what Stanford actually looks like. I don't think they're going to be near as dominant as they were last season, but, they're still going to be a really good team. And playing a team like USC, you really want to see how they match up. And, having those first 2 weeks canceled is pretty tough. I've heard rumors that potentially that third weekend could get canceled. They just don't know anything right now. It seems, really tough to put this schedule together and have it come together while there's a raging pandemic, especially, in the Valley area where they are. It's tough. And yeah, like I said, I really wanted to see the Stanford team come out. I wanted to see them be dominant against that USC team, but it's all out of our control, and postponements are going to happen. Cancellations are going to happen. for the Big Ten, I just really hope they can figure out how to reschedule these games. They keep calling it a postponement, but I don't know at what point where, you know, they kind of just become cancellations.
Yeah, I really want to see some of the. Yeah, I was looking forward to it because at first when I saw the Pac-12 schedule, I was like, what's on the docket today for matchups this weekend? And then I see USC Stanford. I'm like, oh boy, I can't wait. And then I see that's canceled. It's like, oh, dadgummit.
Yeah, really, really deflated. It was like, oh, that was one we were looking forward to. You know, we want to see how Stanford's going to do. I want to see how USC's going to do. Yeah, so that was a knock to the heart a bit, I would say.
Mm-hmm. But there was another Pac-12 matchup that actually didn't cease to amaze. That was Washington losing to Arizona State. The Sun Devils, the young Sun Devils for that matter, went on the road to Seattle and beat Washington in straight sets. How surprised were you when you found out that Arizona State, a young team as they were, knocked off Washington?
Yeah, that was very surprising. You know, I didn't even tune into that match until a little later because I saw they lost the first set and I was like, oh, you know, that's pretty impressive. I bet Washington will come back. And Arizona State handily took the second set. I think it was 25-15. I mean, that team just looked so good. You know, I mean, you compare stats to them. Arizona State just simply outplayed them. They had 49 kills to Washington's 37. They had 53 digs to Washington's 44. They just simply outplayed them. They really, really handled Washington's power players really well. You know, Samantha Drexel, they held her to about 7 kills. Well, they just went and popped off. You know, this young team looked super good, really energized. It was a really, really exciting matchup. And then, you know, you have Washington come back the next day and win that game 3-1, which was exciting. They had their stars kind of step up. But yeah, that was a big upset that Arizona State really needed, and Washington really needed to not lose that one. So that was a really fun one. I think one of the most, you know, I guess exciting games that happened last weekend, just across the board with that Arizona State team knocking off a really, really good high-ranked opponent.
Mm-hmm. And I think, and what that upset tells me is that the Pac-12 will be a dogfight. And I'm not saying that as a pun for the Huskies, but it's going to be tough. I mean, Stanford does return some players, but I don't think they're going to want to roll over that easy. Utah looked pretty dominant over Arizona, but we'll have to see on how they progress. UCLA looked solid against Cal. USC appears to be good. We'll have to see how they fare against Oregon State. Washington State and Oregon both looked good as well. So I think the Pac-12 will be a dogfight, and I don't think it's going to be an easy night for anybody.
Yeah, and I think this year, you know, kind of like I was saying with Stanford, I feel like they're not going to be the powerhouse that they used to be. They lost a lot of those good players. You know, they're still going to be a really incredible team, but yeah, it seems like in the Pac-12 at least, the playing field's getting a little leveled, and it's really going to be a dogfight for who gets that top spot in a bid to the tournament. Like we keep talking about, those bids are so precious this year because it is limited. And so it's going to be really exciting volleyball coming out of the Pac-12. You know, hopefully they can get a lot of these matches in. I know the pandemic's really tough out there, especially in California. So hopefully, you know, we can navigate that in a safe way and figure out a way to play all these matches.
Yeah, it definitely is tough, especially for Stanford and that whole little Santa Clara thingy, the guidelines and whatnot. So, circling back to the Big Ten yet again, what matchups this week are you excited for?
Yeah, this week. So Wisconsin plays Illinois. They play a Friday, Saturday games. I'm kind of excited to see that. I really want to see how Illinois does against a good opponent. I think last season they were good, but they weren't as good as they have been. But they're, you know, I kind of want to see how Wisconsin puts a little beating on them. But, you know, Illinois might come back. Who knows? And what other ones? I'm really excited. I would say, you know, when I look at these matchups, something like Minnesota, Maryland is exciting to me. I think you have Minnesota, Maryland, and Nebraska, Northwestern. You have those top teams playing these middle teams. Maryland looked pretty solid, but I want to see Minnesota really handily take care of Maryland, prove that they're a good team, prove that they deserve to be at the top of the Big Ten this year. And then kind of on the same lines, you have Nebraska, Northwestern. Like I was saying, I'm really excited about this Northwestern team. One, because I'm invested, but two, they just look really good this year. Handily took care of Rutgers, who, like I said, wasn't the strongest opponent, but was a really good opponent. They're putting some really big kills in there. Their block looked really solid, as it always is. And I really want to see how Northwestern does against a top team like Nebraska, a top 5 team. I think they would put up a pretty good fight. They're pretty much almost full health. I think they're missing, one player right now that's a pretty big impact player for Northwestern, but I'm really excited to see how, they do against Nebraska. It's a really big matchup for them. They need at least, one big win this weekend to kind of solidify themselves as a good team, you could say. So I'm excited for those, top teams versus middle teams matchups, and there's a lot of them this weekend. So I'm really excited for the whole weekend. But that Wisconsin-Illinois game and then Nebraska-Northwestern matchups, I'm pumped to watch.
I was gonna say I'm actually quite excited for Northwestern and Nebraska, and I'm also pretty kind of excited for Illinois and Wisconsin. I think more so Northwestern and Nebraska, because that's a huge test for Northwestern, and it's going to be basically a barometer to see how far Northwestern has come and if they can get that top 5, top 10 win over Nebraska. But Nebraska has some talented players like Lexi Sun, Kenzie Knuckles, Maddie Kubiak, I believe her last name is.
Kubiak, yeah.
Yeah, Kubiak. And John Cook is just such a great coach. I think that's his name, John Cook.
Yeah, John Cook. He is incredible. And
yeah.
I mean, this year, this team just, as always, looks incredible. I mean, they, as always, look unstoppable, but they have so many players this year, so many seasoned players that look good. They have an incredible setter, Nicklin Hames. Like you said, Maddie Kubiak, Lexi Sun, Jazz Sweet. They just look good. And they're a lot of fun to watch. Lauren Stiverin, that middle is just, she's very comparable to someone like Dana Rettke, just super physical, a great blocker. I remember going up against her, and every time she goes up for a slide, she hits it dang near the middle of the court. So you got to place a player right in the middle. I mean, she is just completely unstoppable. And I think it'll be, like I said, a really good test for Northwestern to see how they handle a really fast-paced game, a team that's not going to back down at all, with really, really quality, a quality block up there, really good defense out of Kenzie Knuckles. She's actually one of my favorite libero to watch right now in the Big Ten. Kenzie Knuckles is absolutely incredible. She's, running around all the way from the left side to the right side. She just throws her body out. She's so fun to watch, and I think it'll be a good test for her against Northwestern, too. I mean, Northwestern's offense looks incredible, and we'll see how Knuckles does against, big hitters like Temi Thomas Ilara, Adriana Cannon from Northwestern. And I don't know, I think it'll be a really good matchup, and I really want to see how Northwestern handles it.
Here's the scary thing for Nebraska, in my opinion. Nebraska returns all of its players, and that team made the Elite Eight, which, again, that's a scary thing to imagine, because if that young Nebraska team was able to make it all the way to the Elite Eight with that team, just imagine what they'll look like with the same team with a lot more experience. And I just think Nebraska, one thing I don't understand is that why did Nebraska get chosen to finish third? Like, I think Nebraska can finish second, and who knows, maybe they could, hence the words could, knock off Wisconsin, but it still remains to be seen. What do you think about Nebraska?
I think it's tough. I mean, in my opinion, I think Nebraska right now looks a little better than Minnesota, but all those teams are so comparable. I mean, I would say the top four, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Nebraska, Penn State, those are any given year you have no idea who's going to win it. It could easily be any of them. I would say, this season it seems pretty obvious that Wisconsin's going to come out on top, but for those 2, 3, and 4 spots, I mean, it could be anyone. It could be Minnesota, Nebraska, or Penn State. I think those are all very interchangeable teams right now. I would anticipate Nebraska coming in second. Like you said, they are such a veteran team, a lot like Wisconsin is. They're bringing back so many players, so many really big impact players that play so many minutes and points for them. They're looking good. I don't know. I'm excited for, the Nebraska-Wisconsin matchup eventually. That'll be a really good test. But, yeah, I mean, they're just a veteran team that knows what they're doing. They've been together for a while. They just connect so well offensively and defensively. They're just running around the court, passing super strong, especially those outsides. Yeah, they're looking good. I would say they're probably going to finish second.
Mm-hmm. I think second past Wisconsin is going to be very interesting, to say the least. And then Penn State, despite them not having a senior, well, theoretically a graduate transfer, looks pretty solid as well. That junior class looks impressive. Like, next year is certainly going to be one of Penn State's memorable years. But if we can see Penn State play, what do you think they can bring to the table with a pretty young squad?
Yeah, it's tough. They do have a pretty young squad. They lost my favorite libero to almost have ever played. I loved watching Kendall White. She's from around the area that I'm from, and she graduated last year, but just such a decorated player for them. I'm excited to see someone kind of fill in her spot. But yeah, Caitlin Horde, an incredible middle. She is so physical. Same thing with Serena Gray. They've always had really strong middles, really fast tempo, get the ball to them quickly, and they just hammer the ball, which is super exciting. They have a really good setter coming back with Blossom, and yeah, I mean, I'm sort of excited to see how their pins do. They're not bringing back many of their pins. They graduated some. I'm excited to see how they look. Johnny Parker's coming back as their right side, but I think those 2 outside pins, I think, are really going to be the game changer for them. They're not going to be in system all the time. Like I said, they're losing that really good libero, so you would expect them to be out of system a little bit more, especially out of serve receive. They always haven't been the strongest passing team. So, in serve receive, a lot of times they're relying on those outsides. And to me, it seems like if they can figure out a good system for their outsides, hopefully getting it out a little quicker, especially in those out-of-system balls, I think that'll be the game changer for them. But, like I said, I don't know anything about this team. I don't know how they look. I don't know. I mean, just from personnel-wise, it seems like they have a really solid group, but I'm excited to see them actually on the court and see what they could do. Just because, they are such a well-known program. The 7 national championships, you expect them to come out and try to win another championship every single year. So, they'll come out strong. Hopefully they can come out strong soon, and we can actually see them take the court.
And Russ Rose is, as one of my teammates from Ike Sports Radio said, the Phil Jackson of NCAA women's volleyballs, and he couldn't have put it any better. And and it's definitely true, because he seems to always get the best out of his players, and he's been there for 41 years?
Yeah. So he's been there over 4 decades, I think. He's won 7 national championships. He is just an absolute legend in the volleyball world. You watch him sit on. I remember when we would play them. One of our goals was always to get him off the bench. Get him excited and just mad about how his team is doing, because he is so. When he's animated. But other than that, he just sits there and he's thinking up these crazy things in his head for how to coach this team that is obviously incredible. He's had multiple Olympians. He just knows how to coach, and playing someone like that, I remember it was an honor just being in the same room as him, someone that's won 7 national championships, just an absolutely legendary coach.
I totally agree. And again, I just hope we get to see Penn State at least hopefully sooner rather than later, because I think they can do some damage, and it's going to be fun and fun to see them and whatnot. So, looking at this week's schedule, it looks rather quiet, but I think. But again, now let's go to Illinois and Wisconsin. So, you obviously mentioned that Illinois is. Obviously, they won their first two matchups against Iowa, but now they get a true test. What do you hope to see from Illinois this weekend, even though they're the rival of Northwestern?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't like. I think we talked about this last time. I don't know if Illinois even sees Northwestern as a rival, but in my head, it definitely is a rivalry. I hope this team comes out hard. They're a pretty young team this year. They have a lot of freshmen. I think they only have like one or two seniors this year. Megan Cooney, obviously a really great pin hitter for them, but everyone else is pretty young. They looked pretty good last weekend. They won 3-1 against Iowa both nights, but I really want this team to come out and be strong and be good. They have a really good setter. Diana Brown, who played a lot for them last year. And I think defensively, they look really good at the net. Their block is really good. Riley Hinton was Defensive Player of the Week this week. She looks really good up there. But I think, defensively, maybe getting a little more digs might be good for them. But, blocking-wise, they look solid. And they're always a really good blocking team. One thing about them is their setters are always good blockers, which, normally you don't find setters to be the best at blockers, but they're always pretty solid on that front. I think, against a team like Wisconsin, I don't know how they're going to do. I hope they come out really strong. It'd be fun to see them take a set off Wisconsin. I just don't see how it could happen unless, Wisconsin has injuries or just has a complete lapse, but it'll definitely be a good matchup. You expect the Pins to do pretty well, like I was saying. Megan Cooney looking really good out there. Their coach is doing a great job with this team. I would like to see them take a set off Wisconsin. It seems a little doubtful all weekend.
Yeah, I'd want to see the underdog put up a fight, but with that Wisconsin team, though, they just have their bases loaded all over the place and whatnot. But something I actually did want to mention is that, circling back to Penn State, there was this one little fun fact you said about Penn State on Twitter when the whole AP polls came out. What was that fun fact about them being in the top 25 for the past how many weeks, and the top 10?
Yeah.
How many weeks?
They have been in the top 10 for 383 consecutive weeks, and been in the top 25 for 509 weeks. So I think, that was something like 9 years. This team has been in the top 25 for about 9 years, which is absolutely insane. That team is just it is just an absolute powerhouse of a team, like I keep saying. It's funny because you'll find that with the top four of the Big Ten. I'm sure they have numbers like that as well. These teams have always been incredible. Penn State with almost, I think it was something like 9 years in the top 25 is absolutely ridiculous.
I just have one word for their success in the top 10 and top 25. Consistent.
So consistent. And that's just a testament to Russ Rose. He does an incredible job with that program and is consistently doing it year to year. Like we were talking about, it is a young team, but I don't expect anything less of them than what Russ Rose normally brings. He brings a really solid team, a really great offense always. And I don't expect them to break those streaks anytime soon.
I totally agree. So now let's actually jump to another conference. Let's jump to the West Coast Conference. They'll be kicking off their season starting tonight, as some of the teams like San Diego. Oh, I guess San Diego was supposed to play, but they moved that. So there are certain teams that are playing that catch my eye, such as like BYU and Pepperdine. San Diego doesn't play for quite a while, so what teams are you expecting to come out of the West Coast Conference, and what teams are being slept on?
It's conferences like that I don't know the most about, but, you look at someone like BYU, you expect them to do really well. You expect San Diego to do really well. I think I'm excited to see how this BYU team does. They've, I believe, made the tournament for the last few years, and have done pretty well in it. They're always a really solid team, coming out, in the top part of this conference for a while. And I think they really need to assert their dominance this spring in order to, if they don't come out on top, they really got to make a case for themselves to get one of those tournament bids. Because, like I keep saying, they're really precious this year, and they should be pretty good. So we'll see.
I feel that in the West Coast Conference, that there's some teams that are not going to be that deserve to not be slept on. Like, one team in particular, I think, is Santa Clara. That's because they returned some of their top talented athletes, such as Julia Sangiacomo, to their team, and I think they returned like a few others as well. I don't know their names off the top of my head, but I did see them last year in the NIVC against my beloved Long Beach State Beach.
Yeah.
And that team was just talented. Like, when I went to interview Julia, I was like, I feel so short.
Yeah, she's what, like 6'5", 6'6". She's a tall one.
Yeah, but I definitely think Santa Clara could challenge San Diego or BYU, and then there's also Pepperdine, which I feel could also make some noise because they have some returning players such as Shannon Scully, and then they have a former set point guest, Steve Astor, as a part of their coaching staff. So I think that conference will also be worth watching in the near future. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, with NCAA volleyball, you just never really know what to expect. Sometimes there's some really, quality teams coming out of these smaller conferences. Like you're saying, someone like Pepperdine, always a really good school. I really, really hope that, or I wish that, it was a normal tournament year and we could see the amount of teams that we normally see, to see teams like, Pepperdine or these other teams that might not get a bid this year. But I think we're going to be seeing some really good volleyball out of them for sure.
I am very excited for it, and the matchup of this week in terms of the West Coast Conference is Santa Clara, Loyola Marymount. The two teams that were picked to finish 4th and 5th, and I think it's going to be exciting. It's going to be SoCal versus NorCal, which is going to be super fun. So, yeah, nice little California crossover right there. So in any other matchups outside of the Big Ten that catch your eye for this week?
None off the top of my head, but I follow on Twitter a lot too, and a lot of things kind of catch my eye, and I'll tune in really quickly. Like we were talking about, that Washington Arizona State match was not looking like, I didn't really think about it at all at first. Was not going to tune in, and then you see a big upset happening, and you gotta turn it on. It's super exciting. As of right now, I can't think of any really big ones, but I'm sure there's going to be, some really good matches happening across the board. That'll definitely catch my eye to tune into.
I think a matchup from the Pac-12 this weekend could possibly be UCLA at Oregon. Oregon obviously looking a little slightly improved. They went 1-1 last weekend against Washington State. UCLA pretty much eased past Cal, so I think UCLA-Oregon will be one of the more interesting matchups in the Pac-12.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon's very quality team. I mean, they always look really good, and like you said, that matchup is one that, a lot of people look forward to. Oregon, I feel like they'll do really well this year, but, we'll see.
Mm-hmm. And any other or any matchups in the ACC that you're excited for? Because one matchup in particular for me that I'm excited for in the ACC is Louisville Notre Dame Part 2, which unfortunately got postponed.
Yeah, that'll be a really exciting one. They finished pulling up the poll here. They finished 4th and 5th in the ABCA fall poll. Just a really exciting matchup that, we really wanted to see against these two top teams in the ACC. It'll be a really good matchup. These teams, like I keep saying from the ACC, looked really good last fall. And, it's two teams right now that are ranked in the top 15 in the country. It could change in the next, 5 minutes, but that'll be a really good testament to how good these teams really are. Notre Dame looked really, really good last fall. Louisville also looked really good, bringing back a pretty veteran group. I spoke with their setter a few times, and she was just ready to go. Really competitive, just a good leader for their team. So that'll be a really good matchup.
Mm-hmm. And one matchup in the SEC that I also look forward to is Kentucky at Arkansas. Arkansas is, I can't believe I'm saying this. Arkansas, and no offense to Arkansas, God bless them for being so good this past fall, but they're tied for second in the SEC, while Kentucky is sitting at first place at 8-0, while Arkansas is 6-2. So that's going to be my matchup of the week for the SEC. What can you say about that?
I mean, Kentucky, they just looked so good last fall. Arkansas did well, but they finished in the top 15 in the country, but as we know, those rankings last fall were, sort of not the most accurate. I don't know if Arkansas deserves to be there, but, whatever. I think Kentucky will handily take care of Arkansas. They look really, really solid this year. I think they're going to come out really strong. I would expect a sweep or two.
Mm-hmm. I hate to see it or say it for Arkansas, but you also have to look at their wins this year. Other than the Texas A&M wins, their wins haven't been overly impressive. I think they barely had to go. They barely made it out of Mississippi State and Ole Miss alive, and I was even saying that when they played Missouri, I was like, this doesn't look like a convincing 4-0 team, because that schedule of theirs was not overly impressive the first 4 matches, and they.
Yeah, no, I agree. They're barely getting out of Mississippi State, going 5 with them, with Ole Miss, dropping a set to them. They played Mizzou, and, they looked really good that first night, going to 5, and then, getting swept. It kind of looks like a dud of a match. Good wins against A&M, but, that team, not exactly the strongest team either, I would say. Those first 4 matches going 4-0, I don't know if that really speaks to how good of a program they are. If they were a really good program, you might have gotten one of those wins against Mizzou. I don't know. I would anticipate 2 sweeps for Kentucky this weekend for sure.
Yeah, I think pretty much the Wildcats are going to send the Razorbacks back down to earth. If they actually do pull off the win, then I'll be darn right impressed by them being able to do so. But for the most part, Kentucky just looks like the most complete team, and they had the number 1 recruiting class last year. So it's hard for me to pick against the Wildcats. And I also made note of this on one of my friends' shows, that Kentucky women's volleyball has more wins than Kentucky men's basketball. Just let that sink in.
That is awesome. I, as a Indiana University fan, grew up there. That is really exciting for me to hear.
Yes, what a time to be alive. 8 wins for Kentucky women's volleyball, only 5 for Kentucky men's basketball.
Wow. Dang, they're having an off year. Well, good for Kentucky volleyball, but wow, their basketball team has got to pick it up, hold that legacy up.
Exactly. That's what and I was telling my two friends earlier that their women's volleyball team is where it's at because they're first place in the SEC, they're 8-0, and they're number 4 in the nation, and they're not going anywhere. And this is pretty much their year to pretty much have a deep run and maybe, just maybe, challenge some of the bigger teams.
Yeah, absolutely.
And looking at Kentucky's schedule, they have quite the fascinating schedule because now their schedule gets a little bit more tougher. As after Arkansas, they play Georgia. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Georgia beat them last year, and that could prove to be a potential trap game. South Carolina looks pretty solid. They're 5-3, and so is Georgia. The Florida one is basically going to be the match that ends all matches in the SEC, and Florida hasn't been fully perfect as well. They have had their flaws as well, and at this point for Florida, they can't afford any more losses, considering their losses to not Mississippi State, Georgia and South Carolina could set them back further. So We'll see.
Absolutely. And, the AVCA women's poll just came out. Most interesting to me right off the bat, looking at it, Purdue ranked 13 last week, getting swept by Wisconsin both nights, did not even move in the rankings. So just a testament to how incredible that Wisconsin team is, beating a ranked opponent, sweeping them both nights, and having that opponent not even move.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and I'm just now looking at the top 25 right now. Yeah, Texas is still staying put. Obviously, the top 5 or top 10 looks pretty much solidified. But
yeah,
Utah
the top 7 didn't move at all. You have Utah sneaking in there. Penn State, same, didn't play. I'm still surprised to see Florida that high. I don't know if they're as good as that ranking is. You got Washington dropping a few spots after getting beat by Arizona State, but still top 11. But let me tell you, that Purdue, that is them sticking at number 13 after getting swept twice. That just, that shows you where this committee or, where these coaches think Wisconsin is and how good they are.
Now, something that looks very off to me, and I don't know if you've ever noticed it or if you noticed it in the first poll, but why in the name of sliced bread is Louisville ranked higher than Notre Dame when Notre Dame beat Louisville? Do you have any thoughts on that?
It might, a lot of it is kind of, that RPI. They might think Louisville had a tougher schedule, some bigger wins. I don't necessarily agree with that. I would definitely put Notre Dame atop of Louisville at this point, but, I don't know. They could be looking at something different, something with RPI. I don't know, but yeah, I agree. I think Notre Dame and Louisville definitely, should be switched.
That just adds more fuel to the fire for Notre Dame.
Exactly.
Yeah, Louisville was ranked higher ahead of Notre Dame when the whole team, not the whole polls came out in the first week of the season, and then pretty much what happened was Notre Dame brought out the brooms at Louisville and swept them. So that kind of does feel a little weird, honestly.
Yeah, and 4 of their wins are against unranked opponents who were, did not show out at all. And then they have a win over Pitt, but that was really their only big win of all fall. So, I don't even know. I would argue that they don't even deserve to be in the top 20. They won against Pitt, but I don't know if they look that good. Having them above a team like Purdue is absolutely, I think, unacceptable. I think Purdue is way better than them. You could say they got swept twice against Wisconsin. A team like Creighton is better than them. Really not sure why they're up there, but, I don't know. These coaches are voting for them for whatever reason.
Yeah, it does seem a little strange. And something else I got to point out in the top 25 polls, and everyone, please remain seated because what I'm about to tell you is going to blow your mind. Hawaii, a team that is unfortunately not going to be playing this season, hopefully they'll get in some matches, is in the top 25. But again, the Big West Conference opted out of a fall sports competition, so it's another question that may not be answered on why Hawaii is in the top 25 when they didn't even play and they didn't even, they don't even have any matches slated.
Yeah, so I actually, after that ranking came out initially for the preseason, I actually emailed a guy at the AVCA. I was very confused as to why, the Big West was in contention for even being ranked. But, that was because I guess while their conference play isn't really going on, they can still play other matches. But yeah, I agree. The way that he clarified it, was saying that they're allowed to play non-conference matches, so they're eligible for rankings. But everyone is, I guess, except the Ivy League who opted out, because I guess they technically can play matches, but I don't know if it's going to happen. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, seeing them in those rankings, I agree. I remember when those preseason rankings came out, I was a little thrown off.
Yeah, it does feel a little weird, but I would definitely like to see like Hawaii get some matches in, and maybe even like, I know this may sound like a long shot, but maybe even see them play in another conference, like the Western Athletic Conference or the Mountain West Conference, or it all depends on which teams are playing and which teams aren't playing, because everyone was slating that Hawaii should join the Pac-12, but they already have their issues with, 11 teams or 12 teams in that conference, and they can't afford to field another team.
Yeah, I mean, just logistically thinking about a team like Hawaii, the amount of travel they would have to do to play matches is so hard. It doesn't seem feasible to me that they'll be able to travel that much and play all those matches just with everything that's going on, especially on the West Coast. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, hopefully they can get a few matches in, but it seems pretty unlikely for them to get those matches in and have them be really good opponents to kind of prove themselves. If they're getting matches in, I feel like it might be against teams that aren't as strong. So, I guess we'll see. Only time will tell. But I don't anticipate them being able to get that many matches in, especially quality matches.
Yeah, I agree, and it's just been a tough time for everyone, and especially with those two conferences. One last thing before we head to a commercial break. Are you a little surprised to see Washington still in the top 25? Because they only went down 3 spots despite losing to unranked Arizona State.
Yeah, Washington is such a good volleyball team. I think, especially that first night, it's sort of, they bounced back that second night and they did a pretty good job. I think it sort of just explains that, maybe this team wasn't ready to go that night. I definitely expected them to drop. Maybe I would have expected them to drop a little bit more. I don't know. You could make the case that, Arizona State got votes this week. Maybe they should be in the top 25, in which case that, lessens the severity of how bad that match was, I guess. But ultimately, I think Washington just wasn't ready to go for that first match, and it was pretty evident watching that second one that, they won in 4, a good matchup. You expected them to drop. Maybe should have been more, but, without too much shuffling around of the top 25 in general, besides, maybe the last few spots, the top 25 is still pretty consistent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I pretty much agree, and it's pretty much going to be any given night for any of these teams, unless you're Wisconsin and you're just muscling through everybody that's not named like Nebraska, Minnesota, or Penn State. But we'll see how it goes. It's still early in the season, and there's still plenty of volleyball to be played, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm very excited for these matchups this weekend. Excited to see, what these teams can do this spring. It's definitely different, but the teams are really excited to play. These coaches are excited to play. They've waited, I think it was over 420 days for this first matchup last weekend, and they were just ready to go. So it'll be a really good spring.
Indeed, it feels like it's Christmas all over again, except it's a little later Christmas, but that's pretty much going to do it for this interview. Emily, thank you so much for being on. Where can all these amazing listeners find you at, and just plug in your work as well?
Yeah, so, you can find my handle at Emily Ehman on Twitter and on Instagram, and then my work for Big Ten Volley Talk is on Twitter, Big, the number 10 Volley Talk. On Instagram, it's just spelled out Big Ten Volley Talk, also on Facebook. But yeah, you can go to my YouTube channel at Emily Ehman and see some of my interviews there. My latest one was with Wisconsin head coach Kelly Sheffield, who gave a little preview into the season and into that Badger team, talking about, what the schedule is like and the differences from a normal year. Some good stuff there. And then volleyballmag.com, you can find a lot of other, volleyball news, a lot of Big Ten news and all of that. So yeah, I'm really excited we could talk a bit Big Ten volleyball. I always love it, and especially, on this show, it's really fun. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, Emily. Thank you very much for being on the show. Let's go to a quick little commercial break so I can give you a proper goodbye. When we come back, or when I come back, I'll be going over some of the NCAA men's volleyball matches, as well as the preseason conference polls for some of the conferences. So you're listening to Set Point right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey guys, it's Blake Henley, better known as H-Town Blake to some of you. Happy to announce that Bases Loaded is back in full force. We'll be bringing that high heat every Tuesday night here on IE Sports Radio. So come home, get ready, dig into that batter's box, and see if you can chase that high heat, baby. So we'll be coming to you live with all the stats, all the rundowns, all the division rivalries, and every team that's going to make the playoff push to get to that one and only October and get to the pinnacle of what baseball is, to hoist that Commissioner's Trophy when it's all said and done.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Los Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy white tea. We're coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
That is right, everybody, ladies and gentlemen that are still listening or that are listening on the replay. You can check out all of our amazing shows here on IE Sports Radio. We are all just a bunch of dedicated men and women who love to talk about sports and who love to dedicate some of their time and perfect their craft on here. So first and foremost, we definitely got to give a big shout to Emily Ehman for being a part of Set Point and for being a guest this week and a couple weeks ago. And it was definitely fun to have her aboard as well. Like, she definitely knew her stuff in regards to the Big Ten and in regards to NCAA women's volleyball in general. So, before we move on to the conference preseason polls for all the conferences, we just need to get some housekeeping out of the way. As iSports Radio has plenty of sponsors that are the official sponsor of iSports Radio. So the first sponsor is Legacy Financial. 2020 was a tough year, and it looks like 2021 might be going down the same path. However, staying positive, keeping your faith, and continuing to work hard is the goal. If you're ever in a financial struggle at the moment and you need help, definitely call IO at 510-928-2104. If you're doing well and you want to get to the next level, either way, you can give IO a call. And if you're looking for a new opportunity to work for yourself and earn more money part-time, definitely give IO a call at, once again, 510-928-2104 to book your appointment today. Io and her husband, Andrew, are just two people on a mission to help families build a legacy. You can follow them on Twitter at legacy_uncut and on Instagram at SimsUncut. Next sponsor for iSports Radio is Mom is Always Right Media, and that right is actually spelled WRITE. Are you feeling overwhelmed with schoolwork? That would be me. I'm just kidding. Those essays keeping you up at night? Don't lose sleep. Just pick up the phone. Mom is Always Right Writing Agency will give you quality essays and will always make their deadline. Sleep soundly knowing that they are on the job. For more information, call 626-653-3649. Our third sponsor for iSports Radio is It Goes Down in the PM, which is a podcast for Mom is Always Right Media. Make sure you check out the new episode of It Goes Down in the PM, brought to you by Mom is Always Right Media, where they can help you open your business from start to finish. The next sponsor for iSports Radio is Coffee After Dark, another podcast on Mom is Always Right Media. Don't miss the next chapter of your favorite love story. Check out Season 2 of Coffee After Dark, brought to you by Mom is Always Right Media, where they can help your business start from to finish. Then our last sponsor for iSports Radio is the Sports Rundown, which is a sports podcast that goes on every Monday and Friday. Are you a sports fan but have too much time and things going on in your life to keep up with the 24/7 sports news cycle? Or maybe you are new to sports and want to understand other things better. If so, then the Sports Rundown is for you. They are a new podcast that gives you basic professional and collegiate sports news, stats, tidbits, and fun facts by the time you get to work, start your second cup of coffee, or finish walking the dog. Enough information to make you dangerous while talking about current sports events, and they are definitely happy to teach you something fun about mascots, uniforms, history, feel-good stories, and sports rules. They even cover the Premier League, and who knows, maybe they cover volleyball as well. There are new episodes dropping every Monday and Friday mornings, so definitely give them a listen. And you can follow iSports Radio on social media, on Twitter, and on Instagram at iSports Radio. You could like them on Facebook or follow them on Facebook at iSports Radio. And then the website is www.isportsradio.com. So now that that's out of the way, let's get to some of these women's conference preseason polls. And then we'll talk some NCAA men's volleyball, and then I'll let you all get on the rest of your day. So let's start with the American Conference first. So I actually had to dig these up courtesy of Volleyball Magazine, and without Volleyball Magazine I wouldn't have found these conferences because I had a pickle of a time finding some of these other conferences outside of like the Big Ten or the Pac-12 and whatnot. So let's start with the American Conference. The West Division of the American Conference has SMU finishing first with 52 points. SMU also garnered 7 first-place votes. Tulane is slated to finish second. They garnered 2 first-place votes and 45 points. Houston garnered 2 first-place votes and 41 points. Wichita State garnered 26 points. Tulsa had 21 points. And Memphis is slated to finish last in the American Conference West Division with only 11 points. As for the East Division, UCF is slated to win that division as they finished with 10 first-place votes and 46 points. Cincinnati, which made it all the way to the Sweet 16, or no, they made it to the Elite Eight, I'm sorry. Cincinnati is slated to finish second as they garnered 1 first-place vote and 37 points. Temple is slated to finish third with 26 points, and then East Carolina and USF both bring up the rear with 16 points. So that's pretty much the American Conference. Then let's go to the Big East Conference, as St. John's is slated to win the East Division as they garnered 16 points and 4 first-place votes. Villanova was picked second as they garnered 1 first-place vote and 13 points. Connecticut, or UConn, was garnered 8 points. Seton Hall 7, and Providence 6, as those three will be finishing 3rd, 4th, and 5th. In the Midwest Division, Creighton garnered 3 first-place votes and 15 points, as they're slated to finish first in the Midwest Division. Marquette garnered 2 first-place votes and 14 points. DePaul, Xavier, and Butler garnered 8, 7, and 6 points in the Big East Conference, and they are slated to finish 3rd, 4th, and 5th in the Midwest Division. So now let's go to the Western Athletic Conference, and Larry B., I hope you're listening, because I definitely am interested to see how Cal Baptist does this year. So first place, that is the team that's slated to finish first in the Western Athletic Conference, is New Mexico State. 8 first-place votes, 64 points, while Grand Canyon got 1 first-place vote and is slated to got 55 points. UT Rio Grande Valley is slated to finish third and has 48 points. Cal Baptist has 42 points. Utah Valley had 40 points and is slated to finish 5th. Dixie State, Tarleton, and Seattle all had 21 points and are tied for 6th place, and then Chicago State is slated to finish dead last in the Western Athletic Conference as they garnered only 12 points. And Larry says boo everyone that finished above Cal Baptist. I'm interested to see how Cal Baptist does. They actually took some of their opponents to 5 sets, which included New Mexico State. For those that are wondering, Grand Canyon is also is a new edition of the Western Athletic Conference, and this year we will be seeing Cal Baptist in the WAC tournament this year, because last year I think they finished in the top 8 of the Western Athletic Conference, and they didn't make it because they were a new transition team, and the NCAA said transition teams can't play in conference tournaments or play in the NCAA tournament until 4 years have passed, which is dumb. But thankfully, they've lifted that whole thing. So Larry B is saying boo GCU and boo everyone else. Oh. But yeah, I'm excited for Cal Baptist. So next up, we have the Horizon League. So the first place team, the team slated to finish first is Wright State, who finished with 112 points and 5 first-place votes. Northern Kentucky has 111 points and 3 first-place votes. Milwaukee, slated to finish third, has 94 points. Green Bay has 90 points and 2 first-place votes. Oakland is slated to finish 5th with 66. UIC is slated to finish 6th with 62 points and garnered 1 first-place vote. Purdue Fort Wayne, 7th with 57 points. Cleveland State, 52 points, slated to finish 8th. Robert Morris, slated to finish 9th with 43 points. IUPUI, slated to finish 10th, is slated to finish 10th with 22 points. And Youngstown State is bringing up the rear with 17 points and is slated to finish 11th. Let's go to the Southland Conference. So the first place team that is slated to finish first in the conference is Stephen F. Austin, 16 first place votes, 276 points. Sam Houston is slated to finish second with 8 first place votes, 266 points, not too far for them. Texas A&M Corpus Christian is slated to finish third with 2 first place votes and 238 points. Central Arkansas fourth with 220 points. 5th place is Houston Baptist with 199. Northwestern State 188, slated to finish 6th. Southeastern Louisiana, slated to finish 7th with 157 points. Abilene Christian, 120 points, slated to finish 8th. New Orleans, slated to finish 9th with 119 points. Nichols, UIW, Lamar, and McNeese are all slated to finish 10th through 13th. So now let's go to the Atlantic 10. In the Atlantic 10, we have Dayton slated to finish first as they garnered 98 points and 8 first-place votes. VCU is slated to finish second with 87 points and 2 first-place votes. Third place is St. Louis with 84 points. George Washington fourth, 65. Duquesne fifth with 46. Davidson with 45. Rhode Island, 37, LaSalle, 36, Fordham, 33, and poor George Mason brings up the rear with 19 points. So now let's go to the Conference USA preseason polls. In the Eastern Division of the Conference USA, we have Western Kentucky slated to finish first, Marshall slated to finish second, Florida Atlantic slated to finish third, Charlotte slated to finish fourth, Mid-Tennessee slated to finish fifth, FIU slated to finish sixth, and Old Dominion slated to finish seventh. Though Old Dominion did get their first win of the season, so who knows, maybe they could shock the world. Then we have in the Western Division of the Conference USA, we have Rice slated to finish first, North Texas, aka the Mean Green, slated to finish second, UTSA slated to finish third, UTEP slated to finish fourth, UAB slated to finish fifth, Louisiana Tech slated to finish sixth, and Southern Miss slated to finish dead last in the Conference USA. Then we have the Summit League polls. Slated to finish first is South Dakota with 63 points and 7 first-place votes. Denver is slated to finish second with 57 points and 2 first-place votes. Omaha is slated to finish third with 50 points. Kansas City is slated to finish fourth with 41 points. North Dakota State is slated to finish fifth with 37 points. North Dakota is slated to finish sixth with 25 points. Oral Roberts is slated to finish 7th with 23 points. South Dakota State is slated to finish 8th with 20 points. And Western Illinois finishes with a minuscule 8 points and slated to bring up the rear in the Summit League. Something I kind of don't understand is that Denver is actually better than Kansas City at something, considering they're not better than them at football. My apologies, Broncos fans. Anyway, I already went over the ACC polls last fall, but it's always good to remind everyone that Pitt was slated to finish first in the ACC. It's not looking too good for them, as they were finished to finish first. Louisville was slated to finish second. Georgia Tech was slated to finish third. Notre Dame was slated to finish fourth. That's not looking too good. Florida State was slated to finish fifth. That's not looking too good. Syracuse was slated to finish sixth. North Carolina 7th. Boston College and Miami tied for 8th. Duke 10th. North Carolina State 11th. Clemson 12th. Virginia 13th. Wake Forest 14th. And Virginia Tech is bringing up the rear. Pretty sure that Virginia Tech one is not looking too good either. Now let's go to the ASUN Conference. We have Florida Gulf Coast slated to finish first with 7 first-place votes and 75 points. Kennesaw State is slated to finish second with 1 first-place vote and 65 points. Liberty is slated to finish third with 56 points. Lipscomb is slated to finish fourth with 55 points. Stetson is slated to finish 5th with 1 first-place vote and 45 points. North Florida is slated to finish 6th with 38 points. Jacksonville is slated to finish 7th with 28 points. Bellarmine is slated to finish 8th with 22 points. And North Alabama is slated to finish dead last with 21 points. Now let's go to the MEAC Conference, or the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. We have Howard slated to finish first with 117 points. Coppin State is slated to finish second with 74 points. Morgan State is slated to finish third in the Northern Division with 67 points. They're actually tied with Delaware for finishing third, but Morgan State has a first-place vote. Maryland Eastern Shore is slated to finish 5th with 65 points, and then Norfolk State, which actually garnered a first-place vote, is slated to finish last in the Northern Division of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference with 30 points and 1 first-place vote. Where'd that first-place vote come from? Really? Anyway, from the Southern Division of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, we have North Carolina A&T State slated to finish first with 98 points and 1 first-place vote. Florida A&M has 1 first-place vote and has 73 points and is slated to finish second in the Southern Division of the MEAC. Third is Bethune-Cookman with 1 first-place vote and 57 points. North Carolina Central is slated to finish fourth with 52 points. And South Carolina State is slated to finish last with 20 points. Now let's go to the MAC. We have Miami slated to finish first in the East Division with 62 points and 4 first-place votes. Bowling Green is slated to finish second with 60 points and 5 first-place votes. Ohio is slated to finish third with 55 points and 3 first-place votes. Akron is slated to finish fourth with 28 points. Kent State fifth with 24 points. And Buffalo bringing up the rear with 23 points. As for the West Division, Central Michigan is slated to finish first with 67 points and 7 first-place votes. Ball State, 64 points, 5 first-place votes, is slated to finish second. Western Michigan is slated to finish third with 45 points. Eastern Michigan fourth with 31 points. Toledo fifth with 23 points. And Northern Illinois with sixth with 22 points. Now let's go to the Missouri Valley Conference. Slated to finish first is University of Northern Illinois with 6 first-place votes and 96 points. Doesn't look like that might be happening after they lost to Drake this past weekend. Anyway, Illinois is slated to finish second with 4 first-place votes and 93 points. Loyola of Chicago is slated to finish third with 77 points. Bradley fourth with 71 points. Missouri State fifth with 48 points. Evansville sixth with 47 points. Valparaiso with 7th with 39 points. Southern Illinois 8th with 36 points. Drake 9th with 26 points, though that may change because of the UNI win. And Indiana State slated to finish last with 10th place with 17 votes. Now let's go to the Ohio Valley Conference. First, slated to finish first in that conference is Southeast Missouri with 10 first-place votes and 222 points. Jacksonville State not too far off with 5 first-place votes and 216 points. Morehead State, 7 first-place votes, 214 points. Murray State, 2 first-place votes, 180 points. Austin P, 5th with 160. SIUE, slated to finish 6th with 137 points. Tennessee Tech and UT Martin are both slated to finish 7th with 123 points. Tennessee State has 79 points and slated to finish 9th. Eastern Kentucky, Belmont, and Eastern Illinois are 10th, 9th, and 11th, or 10th, 11th, and 12th, finishing with 53, 48, and 31 points. Now let's get into the Power 5 conferences, because those are the only preseason conference polls that I had as of right now. I couldn't find the other ones, which is unfortunate, and I checked all my sources, but I'll be able to get those out of the way in the near future. So the Pac-12, I already went over the Pac-12 slightly, but Utah is slated to finish first with 9 first-place votes. Or I'll just go over them briefly. Utah was slated to finish first, Washington second, Stanford third, UCLA fourth, USC fifth, Washington State sixth, Oregon 7th, Colorado 8th, Arizona State 9th, Arizona 10th, Cal 11th, and Oregon State 12th. I already talked about the Big Ten from last week, but just to run down that quickly, Wisconsin 1st, Minnesota 2nd, Nebraska 3rd, Penn State 4th, Purdue 5th, Michigan 6th, Ohio State 7th, Illinois 8th, Michigan State 9th, Northwestern 10th, Indiana 11th, Maryland 12th, Iowa 13th, and Rutgers, unfortunately, is bringing up the rear. By the way, Wisconsin was a unanimous decision on finishing first in the Big Ten. And I didn't really go over the SEC prior to its schedule being released from last fall, but I'll just skim through it. So, in terms of first through 13th, Kentucky is slated to finish first, Florida 2nd, Missouri 3rd, A&M 4th, Louisiana 5th, Georgia 6th, South Carolina and Tennessee tied for 7th. Arkansas 9th. Ole Miss 10th. Alabama 11th. Mississippi State 12th. And Auburn is sadly bringing up the rear with poor Brent Crouch as the new head coach. So that's pretty much going to be it for all the conference preseason polls. Now, before we head out, I do need to go over some men's volleyball scores. Yesterday we had Pepperdine tied for number 7, Pepperdine edging out Concordia in 5 sets. That was a thriller of a game, and I was very impressed with how Concordia played. Obviously, Concordia has some talented players like Jordan Hoppe and Barsimian, but it just wasn't enough because Pepperdine was just too much loaded. They have talented players across the board. And one player that kind of caught my eye was Bryce Dvorak, who started setter for the Waves. And normally the primary setter was Joe Carlos, but I guess the coach decided to go with Dvorak. But Joe Carlos did see some action, as he actually registered the game-winning service ace yesterday. So that was some good stuff by him. So Sunday we had McKendree beat Lincoln Memorial. Saturday we had number 5 Lewis defeat Lincoln Memorial. We also had number 14 Ohio State knocking off Penn State in straight sets. We had Ball State upsetting George Mason in 4 sets. Loyola defeated Queens in 3 sets. Belmont Abbey defeated Limestone in 4 sets. King defeated St. Francis in 5 sets. Ottawa, Arizona defeated Erskine in 5 sets. Erskine defeated Lancaster Bible in 3 sets. Alderson Broadus defeated St. Andrews in 5 sets, with the 5th set being 28-26. Woo! And Quincy defeated Culver Stockton in 3 sets. This past Friday, we had number 5 Lewis defeating Queens in 3 sets. Number 11 Penn State defeating number 14 Ohio State in 3 sets. Number 13 George Mason beating Ball State in 5 sets. And then we had Loyola defeating Lincoln in 4 sets. King defeating St. Francis in 4 sets. Erskine defeated Marantha Baptist in 3 sets. Lindenwood defeated Georgetown in 5 sets. And other than like a few of these other ranked-on-ranked matches, other than a few of these matchups which didn't really feature too many ranked teams, this past Wednesday, or last Wednesday, we had number 5 defeating Campbellsville in 4 sets. I'm surprised Campbellsville actually took a set off of Lewis. Maybe it was because the coach wanted the Lewis players to not get hurt, not risk getting hurt, because they pretty much dominated the first 2 sets, and then he pretty much played the second string or third stringers, and then Campbellsville, I guess, took the 3rd set, and then Lewis just threw some of the stars back in and took the 4th set, and that was that. And other than that, there weren't any noteworthy ranked matchups. There were some matchups. The season actually started on January 10th, which I'm surprised they started that early, but I'm not going to complain. As Indiana Tech defeated Campbellsville in 4 sets, which is cool. So, something I also wonder before I send you all on your way is, if Penn State is pausing all of its athletics, will their men's volleyball match be canceled? That is something I kind of have to wonder, because the women's volleyball matchup between Penn State and Ohio State has been postponed, but I'm not so sure about the men's volleyball matchup. Will they be facing off against one another this weekend? That still makes me wonder. And because looking at the Penn State men's volleyball schedule, they face Ohio State at Rec Hall this weekend, but I don't know if it's going to happen. You never know with what's been going on with the pandemic, because if they're putting one Penn State sport on hold, they might be putting the rest on hold as well. I know they've put Michigan has put all their sports on hold because of a little COVID outbreak, but I'm not so sure about the whole Penn State program. Like, I'm pretty sure all of Penn State sports are going to be put on hold, but it still remains to be seen. So, we'll see. But other than that, I think that is going to do it for tonight, or today's show. I definitely appreciate it, but one last thing before we go is that we actually have plenty of shows going on later today, as looking at the schedule for today via my handy dandy little schedule that I made. Later on today on IE Sports Radio, we have the Kansas City Shuffle with Dave Friedman and the Pez Choir show, or the Pez Choir Fool. That's going to be going live at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Central Time, and they're going to be talking some Kansas City. The Chiefs are obviously going to the Super Bowl. Who knows? Maybe they'll be talking some Kansas City women's volleyball as well. I kind of made the joke that Denver is actually better than Kansas City at something. We'll see. Like, I can't wait to see those two duke it out with one another. I can't wait to see Denver and Kansas City. Who knows? Maybe we'll get to see Patrick Mahomes, maybe with the whole pandemic lifted, maybe we'll get to see Andy Reid or Patrick Mahomes give the team a talk. We'll see. But after the Kansas City Shuffle, the NorCal Faithful Sports Show with Big Dan comes on at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. That talks about Northern California sports, and my boy Big Dan does a great job with that show. And then closing out tonight, we have my boy Marcus Lose-Great that's going to be talking about McGregor's loss this past Saturday, as he is going to be going on live with Gloves Off at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and he'll be going on and talking about all things boxing, and as he would say, I need that. Which is basically his catchphrase. That's his new catchphrase. Last year was the nerve of you. This year's new catchphrase is I need that smoke, or I need that. You all definitely need to check out Gloves Off tonight, because my boy Marcus is going to bring all that smoke, and definitely bring your tacos and margaritas as well. So there's that. And then next Tuesday, Set Point will be back to its original time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and then next week, I should also mention that the Neutral Zone will be coming back, as Blake Sulcer and Adam Ziske will be talking some hockey action. Definitely do check that out next Saturday. That's going to be going live on 8 p.m. Pacific Time, 11 p.m. Eastern Time. We got a lot of shows going on Tuesday. Like, that's 5 hours of shows that are going live. Name me another podcasting station that does that. I'll wait. That's right, you can't. Anyway, you could definitely, like I said, you could also follow IE Sports Radio as a whole on Twitter and on Instagram at IE Sports Radio, and you could also like them on Facebook. Definitely leave them a nice little rating on the Facebook app, and also do your best to try to leave them a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts as well, and subscribe to IE Sports Radio on YouTube, because that's where all of our other podcasts go as well, just like this one. So definitely do check out IE Sports Radio as a whole on different platforms, and will continue to serve for the people, by the people, or that was vice versa. Either way, we are for the listeners, by the listeners, and nothing is going to break that. So without any further delay, it is time, as always, to drop the beat, as I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You dig? Thank you all once again for tuning in. I also definitely got to give a shout out to the chat room. Definitely got to give a shout out to my boy Larry B, who was pretty much tuning in for pretty much all the show and talking volleyball with me and my guest. And he was saying how Coastal Carolina deserves some love. Also got to give a shout out to Ben Sutterth III for tuning in, and my boy Marcus Lose-Great. I can't wait to hear what he has to say about McGregor's loss and everything that went on. Once again, got to give a more shout out to Emily Ehman, my guest from this week and from 2 weeks ago. She was amazing. signing off. Have yourself a great rest of the day. Enjoy the shows. Be safe. And more importantly, stay positive. One of my friends once told me, stay positive and push forward. Peace and blessings.